Hey guys, my name is Katie, registered dietitian nutritionist. This is Dark Blue Nutrition. Today we are going to talk about PCOS and what it is and what are the nutrition recommendations for it. I know there are a lot of women out there that struggle with a diagnosis of PCOS and also a lot of women that struggle with it that aren't diagnosed. Personally, I have had a lot of struggles with hormonal imbalances after going off birth control, and so that piqued my interest in hormonal health. If you ever have any suggestions for future videos, please let me know in the comments below. But PCOS is one of those things. It's kind of difficult to diagnose because not a lot of doctors really know a whole lot about it, and it can kind of manifest in many different ways, so it makes it confusing to diagnose individuals with PCOS. So you might see me looking down occasionally because I have a terrible memory, but I promise you I've done a lot of research on this, looking at nutrition articles and trying to decode the information for you so I can convey it in a easy to understand way, because I know that even the research that's out there can be very hard to understand. So let's get into it. Okay, so PCOS is a hormonal condition, also called polycystic ovary syndrome. I'll read the definition for you. PCOS is a hormonal condition characterized by having at least 2 of 3 of the following symptoms: elevated androgens, aka male sex hormones, an irregular hormone cycle, which means that your hormonal cycle has been off for over 2 to 3 months, and an ultrasound indicating cysts on the ovaries. You only need to have 2 out of 3 of those things in order to be diagnosed with PCOS. What makes that confusing is that you can have PCOS and not have cysts on your ovaries. Polycystic ovary syndrome is in the name. So people without cysts on their ovaries think that they're okay when maybe they actually do have it, and that's what makes it all confusing for doctors as well. Some of the symptoms that are included in diagnosing polycystic ovary syndrome, or some of the symptoms that you might see, are hirsutism, which means that you have an excess hair growth on your face, on your body. This is excess to normal hair growth on your body. So sometimes you might see like stubble or hair growth in this area, around the nipples, in just abnormal areas that a woman normally wouldn't find that much hair. Also, you can experience weight gain, thinning of the hair, an irregular menstrual cycle, like we mentioned, mood changes, usually more on the severe end, pelvic pain apart from a woman's menstrual cycle. So that's very common to have it during our menstrual cycle, but when it's outside of it, then it's more of a concern. Acne and chronic fatigue. These are 2 common symptoms that I've read again and again in different research articles. Is the fatigue part of things. You feel very fatigued midday, sluggish all the time, like brain fog. And then acne is a struggle, and typically acne that's hormonal is on the jawline. So just because you have some of these symptoms, I just want to clarify that that does not mean that you necessarily have PCOS. I'm not diagnosing you, I'm not your doctor. So if you are concerned with it though, do go to your doctor and check and see if they think this is a concern as well, because hopefully they can figure that out with you and work with you. If you do need a second opinion and you feel like a doctor is ignoring your requests, don't be afraid to go to another doctor and get a second opinion. You may be wondering kind of a little more of the ins and outs of PCOS, and although there's a lot of research that needs to be done on it, I can tell you what I do know and kind of the basics of PCOS. So you might hear the word androgen get thrown around a lot when you hear PCOS, and that's because androgens are the male sex hormones like testosterone that are elevated when someone has PCOS. You will hear this being talked about a lot because a lot of the management of the condition is by trying to lower androgen levels. Elevated androgens can lead to the acne, the hirsutism, and the thinning of the hair. So sometimes you might be recommended like a prescription drug to lower androgen levels, like spironolactone or different things. If you've had anything that a doctor has prescribed you and you've had PCOS or have PCOS, comment below and let me know, because I am curious the other types of prescription medications that are recommended for it. Another word you might hear get thrown around a lot is insulin, and insulin is the hormone that lets your body absorb glucose into the cells so it can be utilized and it can function and it can help your body use that energy that you just consumed in food. So a lot of women with PCOS in the research have been shown to have a little bit of insulin resistance, so they can have symptoms close to that of someone who is diabetic or pre-diabetic and have blood sugar issues. This was one of the things that I was concerned with when I was doing the research, and I still have not had an official diagnosis of PCOS, but I've had blood sugar issues in the past where I have a snack and then 2 hours later I am just crashing for energy, and that is called like reactive hypoglycemia, and that shows that your body is using too much insulin or your cells are very sensitive to the insulin. And so all sciencey stuff that's relevant, but a little too much detail for this video. So if you want to learn more about reactive hypoglycemia, then let me know and I can do a video on that in the future. So long story short, with insulin, we can have a little bit of insulin resistance in PCOS, and so type 2 diabetes is a concern for individuals that have it. And with that, one of the nutrition recommendations for people with PCOS is kind of managing their blood sugars and controlling that, and then that helps regulate their hormones. Finally, a term that you're probably going to hear a lot when talking about polycystic ovary syndrome is progesterone. So I always get this confused, so I have to look it on my computer, so I'm sorry. It peaks after ovulation and lowers before menstruation. When progesterone is thrown off and that peak does not occur before the period, that's when our menstrual cycle can get thrown off, because we don't have that sign from our body that yes, I am ready for my period, I'm ready to start, like the jump and then the dip. When we don't have that, then we can have irregular periods. This is another thing that I dealt with, and I actually went without my period for 2 years, and it was insane. But alas, it is back and regular, but it was definitely worrisome when it happened, and I know probably a lot of you out there have dealt with that struggle as well. So now that we've kind of covered the basics of polycystic ovary syndrome, now I'm gonna go into the nutrition recommendations that I have found that can help you manage your blood sugar. A lot of stuff out there that I've found is restricting gluten, restricting dairy, and cutting them completely out. While I respect other people's opinions on things, a lot of these aren't backed by a whole lot of research. And you know, research can't tell us everything, but it can give us a lot of clues of what is truth and what is kind of hearsay. And so I'm going to tell you what the research says. What I found on dairy and gluten was not very definitive, so I can't really speak on how those affect your body and your hormones in that respect. I do know that like gluten, there's an argument that it causes more inflammation for the body, and for those with PCOS, that can irritate other things that can make your PCOS worse. So take that with a grain of salt, because that was not something I found in my research. What I did find was that a high fiber diet was a very, very good thing for PCOS, and I'll tell you why. So also just a disclaimer before we go over nutrition recommendations, there is not one thing that's going to control your hormones or completely change them. Your body is what it is. Your hormones are chemical. They're not going to just instantly turn off or on based on what you eat or what you do, but you can do things to help balance them out a little bit and help your body kind of function regularly like it should. So it's very common in women with PCOS to have strong cravings for carbohydrate. That has to do with the hormonal imbalances that we experience. I know a lot of you might be tempted to go very, very low on carbohydrates and restrict them, but actually it's better to have a moderate amount of carbohydrates and just have more whole grains and more high fiber carbohydrates, so they keep you fuller for longer, and so they manage your blood sugar and keep it from spiking up and then dipping back down. Severely restricting your carbs is actually going to do more damage than good, because a lot of times we can get low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, and we do not want that to happen, because that is not fun for you guys. And it actually, if we're not getting carbohydrates, then it reduces our ability to produce serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, which is much needed when you have a hormonal imbalance that causes mood swings. Another positive about high complex carbohydrate, fiber-rich diets is that fiber helps you be more regular, and being more regular means you're excreting and pulling out some of the bad guys in your body, for lack of better words, some of the waste products like excess testosterone that your body does not need. And so when that's excreted, then your body's able to excrete the excess testosterone, and then you can lower your androgen levels. Furthermore, it kind of helps with managing blood sugars and keeping you steady throughout the day, so that you can lower your risk of developing diabetes, and you can kind of manage those blood sugars throughout the day so you don't have that dip in energy. So when you're looking at PCOS, you also want to look at restricting some of your added sugars, just lowering them overall. You don't have to completely restrict, but the more you can cut back, the better it's going to be on those peaks and dips of energy levels and peaks and dips of your blood sugar. So for the typical American diet, they recommend no more than 10% of your calories gets taken from added sugar. This would apply to individuals with PCOS as well, but also if you can get even lower than that, that would be even better, because individuals with PCOS have an even more big sensitivity to these sugars. Sugars would be anything like table sugar, you can get maple syrup, honey, that's all sugar. You can try replacing it with something like stevia if you prefer like an added sweetener. Include that in your diet if you have artificial sweeteners or stevia or whatever. For women with PCOS, it's actually better that we have a little bit of something like stevia versus a lot of like honey or maple syrup or sugar. There are other things that you can supplement in your diet to help with PCOS. I did find spearmint tea being good for lowering androgen levels. Also, omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D supplementation have been shown to help manage all the other symptoms that are related to PCOS as well. These are options if you have the money for it and if you feel like this would be good for you. By no means do you have to supplement, but for certain populations like women with hormonal imbalances, I do think that supplementation is not a bad thing to think about. A final message in this is be wary of anything that kind of promises a quick fix or that promises like overnight results or completely managing your hormones, because that's just not real. That's not the case. And I know there are so many people out there that are going to sell you a diet or sell you a specific way of eating to get your money and to like make you fear certain categories of food. And I just don't want that to be the case. All foods fit, and I do think that there are certain guidelines that we should go by to just live a healthier lifestyle, but restricting ultimately is just not something that I would recommend personally as a dietitian and just as a person in general. I've had my own struggles with food, and I feel like everyone does have their own personal struggle with food. So don't focus on the restriction, focus more on like what you can do to change your body and to help your body. So up that fiber, up those complex carbohydrates, and balance out your blood sugars in that respect, and then you will feel happier and healthier because of it. If you have had any personal experiences with PCOS, comment below and share your story. I would really love to hear it and just hear what kind of things that you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and yeah, I just share the love, share the stories. Everyone in the community would benefit from hearing your story. I would benefit from it too. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will talk to you guys next time. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.